welcome. Everybody, Julie's behind the computer dancing. Blaine has a big smile on his face. Mary's smiling. That music's the right choice, Matt. See, I told you. Not bad.
It works. I got to update my music.
Well, Mary, you are a survivor, a perseverer, and just a person that I think exemplifies a mindset that's necessary in order to achieve and expand and grow no matter what the circumstances are. And you've proven that both in a personal individual level with personal crises, as well as we all share, as Deepak Chopra told me, for the very first time, everyone on earth is questioning our actual existence, which is a crisis in itself, I imagine. So I want to get to perspective right off the bat. You obviously have trained yourself to have a positive mindset, and would love for you share as much about the misfortunes personally or not, but most importantly, would love to see what your philosophy of mindset is.
Sure. So I started this business about a year ago, and it started from me getting laid off, like half Americans in this country. Going through a personal situation that was unfortunate, that was challenging, and then my mom passing away last November. And still, and with a growing team and growing pains as well throughout the whole process, and still getting through. And I remember saying to my team at the end of last year, first of all, thanking them so much for joining this ride with me and being so patient with me through all these challenging times that no one could predict, right? But also that if we could get through all of these, things that normally happen over multiple years that have happened to me within 1 year, that we can get through anything as a company. And not only did we get through it, we grew it from just me to now 27 people 1 year later. So it's overwhelming to say that. I still can't believe I'm saying those words, but I feel very grateful.
That's something. Now, David had asked about the mindset that made this possible. If you could kind of encapsulate that, because a lot of the work that both David and I do organizes around mindset. For you, what are some of the descriptors, I guess, you would use to kind of identify the mindset that you actually leveraged?
I think the mindset of, I just have a really positive attitude. I always see the world as half full, not half empty. And even though life will throw you reasons to have that mindset of, seeing the negative in everything or seeing the worst in people before you see the best, people can surprise you. And also I have a mindset of, I take a lot of chances on people that we hire, right? We don't hire the typical person. We hire people that care about the work that we do and care about the team and that are hustlers, right? They have drive. And so, I have compassion and empathy. I hope that everyone that works with us as a client and everyone that we work with, works for my team, also exudes those types of personality traits, because at the end of the day, this past year has told us everything can, hit the fan, right? And you have no control over a lot of things. You have a control over how you act, how you respond, and how you treat people. And I think the reason why people gravitate to our team is because we treat people as if they're our best friends, right? Because that's what we hope to gain over the long run. And I think that's the mindset that has worked well for us. And
then just logistically, to bring on 27 people in a year when everyone's working remote. And I'm always just impressed that people can not only hire remotely, execute and implement remotely, but build a corporate culture. I mean, you went from 1 to 27. It's one thing when you have already 100 people and you go to 140 from 100. There's always an already established a lot of systems and structure in place. To go from 1 to 27 is extraordinary. To do it remotely is, unheard of. And I'm thinking in my mind how difficult. How are you capable of scaling remotely with no system structure or culture in place other than the individual system structure and culture that you had for yourself?
Well, first of all, I came to starting this with never really managing anyone besides interns. So there was a huge learning curve for me. I mostly hired based on workload as clients came in because of Upwork, which is where we started. and where we started hiring, and I hired friends as well. You know, most people started part-time, and as work starts growing, they start growing in terms of the hours, and also leveraging a global community. You know, you can really gain really great talent that you normally would not have access to. And also because so many people were in the same boat as me and laid off, you know, a lot of people are willing to take a chance on a new company when they don't have a new company to work for. And then they get to learn what it's like to work with me. And then also the type of team that we have, because I'd say about 60% of the team that we have has either known me for at least 5 years because they used to live in DC, or have been connected to someone that now has joined my team. We have a very tight community of people that we work with, where, you know, we get along very well, and we have this very joyful experience. While yes, we vent, we have, you know, some clients that we wish we didn't have at one point or another. Everyone does, but you know, we get through it together. And I always say it's a family. We help our own, we support our own, and then we always make sure we have fun things. Like we're doing a retreat every year, right? To make sure that we grow and like get to know each other on a different level, or having like a once a month a fun lunch where all we literally do is show funny videos and make each other laugh, because sometimes you just need to laugh.
Mm-hmm. That's, you know, you said something a bit earlier about, and you've actually mentioned it a couple of times, treating people like family, both, you know, the employee group, but also your clients, that whole dynamic of relationship. And David has heard me say this ad nauseum, but all any organization is at the end of the day is a collection of people that are in relationship. And if the relationships are working well, you got a pretty good shot at being successful. And that's not about singing Kumbaya. I mean, it really isn't. It's about doing what needs to be done, but doing it with respect and doing it with integrity. And so from a mindset perspective, you know, we originally titled this segment of Office Hours as the soul of business office hours. So in my podcast, The Soul of Business, I ask people one question. When you hear the soul of business, what does that bring up for you? And I'd like you to kind of consider that question in terms of what you've done this last year, the soul of business. What have you actually leveraged?
I think the personalities of the people that work for us. I think so much of it is about people. You know, like when I think about when someone asks me, where's your favorite place to live? I would say it's not about the place, it's about the people. At the end of the day, you can live anywhere, you can go out anywhere, you can choose any PR firm you want to choose. But at the end of the day, you work with people that make things easier. My dad used to say 90% of the reason why people get hired or fired are based on personality. Can I work with this person? Is it easy to work with? Do they make it easy for me? And I think that for me is the soul of business, is people and how people treat one another. And I know I said it a few times, but it's literally what I think sets us apart from other people.
Yeah. And go ahead, David. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to be a little quip here. We'll hire people for what they can do and then fire them for who they are. And that has been so typical in most of the businesses that I've consulted with. Yeah.
And I love that quote. You know, and you look at things as global strategies, right? And to that respect, as I've been in marketing and PR for 35 years and worked through different spectrums of people and looking to see what demographics and all types of from non-data to data points that are necessary to effectuate where people want to be, and then understanding the ego and the emotion of the client who thinks they should be on Good Morning America and don't understand that, number one, there's no chance anywhere to get on Good Morning America, and two, if they did, it would do nothing for them. And I'm sure you're smirking for a reason. But as a global strategy, what I have found over the last few years is that we can't fathom, especially in PR, how big the audience is, how the scaling of what we do, and that people have lost perspective. Even our bigger clients, the Fortune 500 clients that we've had, they cannot fathom how big the audience is, and they get caught up in saying, "Oh, you know, that's not what we're looking for." And meanwhile, what you should be looking for is just an open mind, because everyone's so connected, and there's 4.6 billion people. And if you can address 1,000 people with an open mind that are engaged and interested in your client, you have a big win, and it's going to go big time. And so for you, how have you seen that evolution of the size, scope, and scale of the audience? And how do you communicate that to your clients, that let's re-engineer our vision of how we're truly going to bring value to you for the objective that you came to me for?
Yeah, I think first of all, every single client wants Forbes, TechCrunch, GQ, whatever. I see it sometimes and I laugh because sometimes it's not the right fit for them, or they think that just sending out a press release is the golden ticket. When, I mean, to be honest, I used to work in a newsroom. No one cares, and I don't mean that rudely. I just mean like they have 1,000 other emails. The likelihood that they're going to post the actual press release is very unlikely. I think it's really analyzing their audience, where they want to go. Like with personal brands, I like asking the question that a friend once told me is like, if you were going to write a memoir about yourself 100 years from now, what would you want that to say? Because it tells me a lot about where someone's at now and where they want to be seen, right? And that helps me plan and navigate the audience of who we're reaching out to and what fits best. And it's also on the topic. How relevant is the topic? Is there a global reach for that topic? Is it local? Can we make it national? Like just finding the angles. It's really about, and then at the same time, what I always tell people is you have to have a why should I care factor, right? In radio, we call it the lightning rod effect. Why would people care about what you're saying, right? Why would that audience care about it? You know, and how big is that audience? And if that audience isn't very big and it's only niche, then a niche win is actually a great win for you. Right? But it's understanding and explaining those wins. And especially when someone starts off, I always tell them it's a ladder approach. You know, you don't get to Forbes overnight. You don't get to Good Morning America overnight. You have to build credibility. And also, I want people to get comfortable talking on air. You don't want to throw someone on CNBC that's never been on TV. I mean, you could, but then, you know, it's not going to be the best it could be.
Absolutely. Comic Relief isn't the place to have that happen.
No, absolutely not.
Well, we certainly appreciate everything that you're doing, and I'm going to still try to figure out how you went from 1 to 27 in a year of a pandemic. That's extraordinary. You should be proud of yourself. Not that you haven't been honored as a 40 under 40 and so many other things that you've done in your career, which is why the cream rises to the top, even during a pandemic. I see it again and again and again. Thank you for teaching us how to be that cream, Mary. Where can people find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Mary Elizabeth Elkordy, or on Instagram at Mary Elkordy, ELKORDY.
You got it. Thank you so much, Mary. We'll see you soon. Great job.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Mary.
Take care. Right on. All right. We go to one day to another. Joel is here waiting in the green room. He is with SevenRooms, CEO and co-founder of SevenRooms. SevenRooms supports restaurants during the pandemic in their own unique way. And unlike our friend Mary, Joel had no experience at all. He's able and capable. I mean, Mary has been loaded up from Hillary Clinton's campaign on for the last 15 years. You know, she was under 40 when she was like 24. You know, this poor guy here, he's doing it the old slingshot way and I'm going to ask you, how have you been able to be so successful with no hospitality operation experience at all?
Hi, David. Thanks for having me on. And I was chuckling, trial by fire, a lot of necessity, a lot of time. And I was even laughing when Mary was saying you shouldn't put someone on CNBC that hasn't been on TV before. Because one of the first things I did was actually go on CNBC, even though I had never really been on TV before. So yeah, a lot of spending time with customers. I think having an open mindset and then doing the job by learning the job by doing the job. So really understand the challenges is if you haven't done that work before, I think there's a lot to be said about getting your hands dirty so you can understand the customer you're solving.
Well, yeah, real quick question here, Joel. Yeah, and doing the job by, understanding the job by doing the job. For our listeners and viewers, what is the job that you've been doing? Because it's fascinating what you've been able to do here. It truly is.
I won't go into all the details. We help operators better understand their guests through data and then turn that into more personalized experiences. So everyone has been to a restaurant where they're a regular at, and the people are there that know them, and it's such a great experience. And you've gone back to that same restaurant, and if the people are there that if there aren't the people there that know you, it's a very different experience. And so we started with that fundamental problem of why is that? And so we provide a platform that helps operators make better service easier, helps make their guests feel at home. And so we started from the consumer side, but we quickly realized if we could help the operator, then that also helps the consumer. And long story short, we spent time at the host stand. We spent time in the offices with these restaurants. We spent time being their marketing team. And when I mean we spent time, we actually did the job. And that helped us really understand what the real problems were, not the consultant, what we think the problems are, but really what are the problems we live with.
And how do you get into that business? You know, it's so interesting. You're a young entrepreneur, and you know, I'm sitting there as an operator, and I have this young kid that doesn't have any experience come in and say, well, I'm going to run your marketing for you. And I'm going to say, yeah, after you go clean some dishes and learn my business. You know, even one of my great friends is the general manager of the Montage, which has an exceptional service, exceptional record, Rick Reese, world famous hospitality guy. And he hires these kids from Cornell with extraordinary experience in education and hospitality. And he sends them, you know, first day to go clean rooms. And, you know, there's a kid your age with a lot more experience than you saying, whoa, I went to Cornell. I'm not going to clean. What am I? And he said, no, you have to learn my business to be a great operator. And how did you effectuate getting the opportunity to do all of these different things when you have no experience? I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't understand how to get the opportunity like you've gotten.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind. The first one is you have to knock on a lot of doors. Eventually one of those will open. So, you know, it wasn't like the first operator we asked to help said yes. We probably heard hundreds of no's before we heard a yes.
You're the Jack Canfield of toilet cleaning. I love it.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And then the other part is, at least for hospitality, it's harder to say no to a customer, and it's harder to say no to a loyal customer. So some of the early days, we went to the same place again and again and again, and we built a relationship with the manager. And we eventually, after the 8th time, we said, hey, actually, we're just thinking about this thing, but we don't know the business. So we went hand in hand to say, we don't know your world, but we love to understand it. And is there a way we could understand it? They said, yeah, sure. Come in and shadow my team for 4 hours. Come in on this day. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, once you start to create value for the industry, then you have a track record where you can do that next thing. And for instance, going back to Cornell, one of my co-founders is now on the board of the Cornell Hotel School, where she gets, so it kind of evolves from we were in the back office picking up pieces of paper, answering the phones, to now getting a front row seat at some of these places.
Now, how do you measure your impact? FedEx is here.
Welcome to Zoom 2021. Yeah. I thought maybe that was Coco at first, but it's your dog. Sorry, perfect.
Oh, that's Maddie. Yeah. So how do you measure your impact, Joel, with the clients that you're working with?
Yeah, ours is really simple formula. The first thing is, how many dollars are we delivering to our restaurant partner? And are we delivering more dollars than what we cost? So very simple equation. Are we helping them make more money? And then the second equation is, are we helping them deliver personalized service to their guests? Are we making better service easier? And that's less of a scientific thing. It's more of a talking to them, understanding the problems, hearing feedback. Those at its simplest form is how we measure how much value we're delivering.
And Joel, one of the things I think is interesting, and I've been trying to teach my team this more and more and more, and Lee Steinberg really honed me into this philosophy of spheres of influence, of what he calls playing chess. He said most people are always playing checkers, right? I'm going to go knock on doors, and eventually someone's going to open it. Playing chess is, I'm going to establish a relationship by spending some money and investing in a restaurant, and then asking how I could be of service or value to them, or asking them for help, either one, and building value within the context of that relationship so that opportunity avails itself. And then I can go ahead and articulate the quantitative value furthermore to exceed and expand the opportunity. And then once I've proven myself, I now not only have emotional attachment, but now I have credibility, and I can further articulate a quantitative value to have even more opportunity. You know, where did that chess playing, because you're so young, you know, it took me into my 30s working for the most notable sports agent in the world, who used to tell me, don't recruit from the head coach, go talk to the trainer. The trainer, they don't fire trainers. He's going to be there for 35 years. He doesn't get gifts like everyone else. Go in, make friends with the trainer. He gets nobody hides information from the trainer. He's going to not only know all the information, but he's going to tell the kid to talk to you. Stuff like that is playing, chess in sports agentry, not checkers. Where did your chess experience come from?
Yeah, it really, and I love the analogies here, so I'll play off of that too. It really came from failure. And the first failure we had was we were actually playing checkers with ourselves, which was we weren't talking to enough customers. We were solving problems we thought they had, not that they actually had. And we fell in love with the solution. And what we learned is you have to fall in love with the problem, not the solution. Mm-hmm. And the other thing we learned is the way to understand the problem is to do it yourself and learn it. And it's not from your point of view, it's from the customer's point of view, or in this case, the restaurant owner's point of view. And so the way we started playing chess was to say, it's not about us, it's about this person. And if you can't deliver real value, no one's gonna care. And I think the only way we learned that is we tried one way over 2 years, failed miserably, which was a really tough lesson at that point in time, but it taught us very much that it's not about us, it's about the customer. And we should start to think about that game, not the game that we think we're playing.
That whole notion of getting in front of and in the shoes of your customer. My oldest client, and I say oldest in terms of longevity, has been with me for about 33 years now. And that relationship—
That's older than Joel.
I know. But it began it's a Japanese company, but it began with me spending 6 months just getting to know who they were before I ever suggested, here's something I can do for you. And that has translated into a 33-year long, very lucrative partnership and client relationship over this many decades. That is worth its weight in gold. That realization, and to your point, David, about playing chess. Yeah, chess is a long-term game. Yeah, you look down the horizon. Now you can play it very, very fast. You can put a timer on it, but you're looking at how do we move here? How do we move? And that dance gets played out very interestingly.
Absolutely. And I think when you start to realize it's a long game, not a short game, you start to approach people differently. And as an example of that, I tell our team, be nice to everyone inside the restaurant. And what that has yielded is the person who was working the host stand 5 years later becomes the general manager, opens up the next restaurant. And we're starting to see this compounding effect of relationships where, because we treated them the right way when they weren't important, they come to us and they remember that experience. And I think in the world of hospitality, even more than most, that certainly seems to be true. And so we take an approach. It doesn't matter where they are, what they do, treat them the way. And it's things that make sense, but when you start to see it happen in action, it means everything in the world.
Yeah, there's a guy that's even older than Blaine and I named Dennis Waitley that talks about planting seeds under trees you'll never sit under. And I've had one of the biggest intern programs in the world. And I'm old enough now, which is a positive and a little bit discouraging, that my interns are running the sports world. And, years and years and years ago, when I was teaching what I teach, the values and the daily practices in order to effectuate productivity, accessibility, and gratitude to be efficient, effective, and statistically successful, I didn't realize, the power that would have 30 years later, when the presidents of teams and even owners of teams were interns for me. And now, I coach still. They've come back to me to, gather that wisdom, or they just provide opportunities when someone brings up, hey, who would you use for this? That is more meaningful. And so, people, they don't mind hard, but they definitely don't like long. And I've learned to really love long. I don't mind hard. But, to enjoy the consistent, persistent pursuit of that, and to play chess or to look 6 moves down the board is an exceptional quality for someone as young as you. And I can see why you're successful by what you've done. And I appreciate you articulating and illustrating to everyone that, you don't have to have a PhD in hospitality from Cornell in order to build a big business. You can actually just be kind to your future self and do things the right way. And I think that's the best way to summarize what you've been able to do, Joel, with 7Rooms. We know it's 7rooms.com. Is there anywhere else you'd like people to reach out to you?
Sure. Joel at 7rooms.com. The number 7 spelled out, so feel free to shoot me a note if you're interested in connecting.
That's SEVEN, in case you spell like me. Rooms, ROM. I didn't go to Cornell either, so hang in there, brother. I teach there sometimes, but they didn't let me in there, or Stanford or Harvard, but they listen to me now for some odd reason. We appreciate you both, Blaine and I. Thank you so much. Please reach out. We'd love to be of service to you and help guide you, and have some introductions as well we'd like to help with. Okay.
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks, Blaine. Pleasure.
Thanks, Joel. You take care.
Great
Bye.
job.
I love that.
Yeah, you're experienced enough when you know what they call it, and 3 questions in, I'm like, okay, this kid has it.
Yeah.
And Mary had it as well. But she had much more experience in what she does and how she does it. And I was really curious, the success that he's had. How did he do it and get the credibility? Yeah, it was really nice.
That again, it kind of circles back to mindset. Yeah, I mean, just kind of how do you think about what's going to be out there? How do you think about it?
And most people won't even try, right? And
I know most people don't think.
Most people don't think, and it's becoming more and more apparent. The higher power of thinking is a unique capability that's becoming more and more individualized. But nonetheless,
however,
let's get Zen here. I got my man, John Kelly, Zenreach.com. He's been working through what is the most puzzling of all marketing aspects in online advertising and e-commerce for years and years and years. He's not an overnight success. He's been dealing way back AOL, with the Leonidas group, Yahoo and eBay, probably Netscape. I was in this game from 92 on. So I know. So my first question, Joel, is you've been here since the inception. You have understood the power of this huge database of people and the power of a community, and how do we get eyeballs or whatever else we're looking for from the community. But it seems to me in the last few years that the exponentiality, the hockey stick, has really hit the advertising and marketing side of things. The ubiquity of advertising and marketing has reached to the individual. And it's more changed my life when I realized it. And I'm glad Gary Vaynerchuk punched me in the head and said, hey, don't worry, you're not too old to build your own brand, and there's billions of people that would love to hear from you. How do you see, that evolution and this unbelievable exponentiality that's occurring right now today?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So if you look at kind of how this has evolved, right, it was, curiosity and eyeballs at the very beginning 20 years ago. And that's all we had. We didn't even have a way of paying for anything online. And then we got like a way to pay for stuff online. So people started shipping stuff online, which was great. And then the people figured out like, hey, there are these little things, snippets, we'll call them cookies, we'll put them on the browser, allows you to do personalization of advertising. And that was like much better, much stronger, better return. And so here we are today, where even though e-commerce has done extraordinarily well, it's still, last year during the epidemic, only represented 20% of all dollars spent. 80% was still offline, so 20% of all dollars, but internet advertising was 52%. So it's the disproportionate amount of money that goes into internet advertising, almost entirely because of the efficiency and the transparency that you get, which you don't get from other media sources like billboards and radio and TV. And so as I look out,
and let me tell you one thing, because this is an educational platform for everyone. I think it's really important because I, like you, have been in this game a long time. I think one of the interesting things about billboards, about other traditional media, is that now you can drive by it with your phone and get double the value out of it, right? I call it the stage theory, right? Because now we can capture it, modify it, amplify it, and perpetuate it. And although only 300,000 cars are going to see the billboard of the Playbook, my new podcast, I go ahead and capture, modify, amplify, and perpetuate it. And I got 3 million people downloading it.
That's right. That's right. There's all sorts of, so now we're in this phase of technology where we're bringing the efficiency of the internet to the offline world, right? And you talk about, there's digitized billboards. There are ways of measuring through IP addresses, your television, right? And one of the things that we do in my company is enable us to know when somebody's seen an online ad and has walked into a particular location. So there's a lot of investment that's being done to capture that 80% and make that 80% of the dollars, make that more effective in driving advertising that can perform in the same efficiencies as it does in the online world.
The idea behind your company is to get literally to grab that 80%. If I could just kind of net it down, it's kind of, how do we get that that 80% to actually get eyeballs on in a non-electronic way what it is that we're trying to make available? And I know this is a kind of a strange question, at least it is in my mind as I'm starting to form it here. God, how do you do that? I guess would be the easiest way to say this.
It's actually like
not there, man. I like it. Tell me how you do it. Give me the secret sauce.
So, secret sauce. Yeah.
Online, like what these cookies and everything is essentially, you have what is called, for lack of a better term, identity. There's an online identity, and it can usually be focused on like your email address. And if you have someone's email address, you can advertise to them across multiple platforms,
right?
Okay, including email. Like it's a basis for targeting you on Facebook or Google, right? Now, in the offline world, what do you have that's consistent and persistent? You need an offline identity, and this is it. It's your mobile phone.
That's what I was wondering. Yep.
It's your device. And so if you have both of those, an online identity and offline identity, you can do a tremendous amount of damage, right? You can be very effective in communicating that message out there.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm going to take that to a different level from personal experience over the last 5 years. I find it interesting that we have a bunch of 17 to 21-year-old digital marketers that really don't have the concepts of marketing. And it reminds me of when I went to law school and I started learning legalese, and I realized this is a con. This is a scam, that they're teaching me a language and then they're allowing me to charge people a ton of money because I know this language. And then I got in technology in the 90s and I'm like, this is a scam. These guys are talking about really basic things, and they think because they put a whole bunch of letters by it that it somehow is going to confuse traditional business people. And now the biggest scam for me are these young digital marketers that are absolutely doing nothing, and charging upwards of 5-10 grand up front, 10 to 20% of your ad spend, and coming up, and literally because the system itself is so efficient that as long as they create some sort of vending machine that's profitable, the client has no idea that their marketer has no idea what they're doing. There's multi-billions of variables involved in. Because I'm more interested than interesting, I found more than not that the younger digital marketers, people that don't have a traditional marketing background, are blowing smoke up my butt like the lawyers and tech people in the 90s and 2000s. Yeah, how do we protect ourselves to know the difference between someone that actually knows, and is statistically strategic about what they're doing, compared to, throwing something at the wall and hoping that we create a vending machine that's profitable?
Yeah, well, it's hard to when they're reporting out on their performance, right? So whenever you give somebody money and you give them the opportunity to give you the grade back, that's going to be a difficult situation to be in. And that's usually the way most advertising works. You give me the money and I'm going to tell you how many impressions were served and how well it did. The bigger clients are easier because they're just trying to cover their ass. So as long as you give them a good report, they're super happy. That's right.
They don't look under the hood.
Yeah. So I think the fundamental thing is all advertising is basically done on an ROI basis, right? So everybody knows what their investment is, but you don't know what your return is or how it's measured. And so I would just encourage everyone, how did you measure this return? And go in 2 levels deep on that question. Okay, was it clicks? Okay, if it was clicks, was it generated? How long after the click did the purchase happen? Was it 7 days? Was it 28 days, right? Was it in-store traffic? How did you measure the in-store traffic? What's your source of that? Like, just go with 2 levels deeper on how you measure the return part, not the investment part, because we all know that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So essentially what you're challenging me as a buyer to do is decouple cause from effect.
Yes.
And really examine, okay, is that cause really correlate to the effect that I think I'm getting?
Yeah. And there's like, you talk to 10 marketers, they're going to have 10 different ways of attributing sales across their marketing platform. Right. That's okay, right? Like, we're not going to solve that. And one marketer might have one way of looking at it, another one has a different way. But what we should all align on is the basic fundamental metrics that we're looking at, right? If it was, attributing a sale 28 days after like a click online, that's a pretty long window. That might not be appropriate. It might be appropriate in the offline world, and it's certainly appropriate when it comes to buying cars, where there's a long purchase cycle. But those are the questions that you want to know is, all right, you're saying that you delivered this. How did you measure all of that? And go 2 levels deep. Yeah.
And what I'm going to suggest here is that as a buyer, I ask that question up front before I sign the service agreement.
100%.
Yeah. So 100%. I don't want to trust your standard reporting metric. I want to know what's going to actually be measured that I care about.
Correct. And it's always in the fine print, right? Like, right. Especially from the agency reports, right? But ask it up front. Ask up front. That's my biggest thing is ask up front. And like, how are we going to measure success? How are we going to determine what the value is that's being created here?
Yeah. I think, the rule of trust and vet, so many people are trusting, but they don't ask the hard questions. And I think getting 2 levels deep. But one of the specialties that you have is the walkthrough rate, correct? Which is the second level rate of understanding how are we creating a profit center? How are we driving not only traffic, but sales? And so how and what should we be asking in order to determine the walkthrough rate when we're looking to hire someone like you?
Great. So walkthrough rate for us is whenever we put an online message in front of a consumer, they see it and then they come into the location. So like a restaurant, for example, or a bar or a retail shop. And we determine this, especially if you're talking about retargeting, we don't do this in a probabilistic fashion. We do this in a deterministic fashion. We showed an ad in front of John on Wednesday and he walked in on Saturday. And we're able to do this because we have John's identity, both the online and the offline identity. If you're looking at other solutions in this space, you want to ask, how are you going to determine when somebody is in my location? There are a lot of different data sources out there. If it's anonymous, question mark. Why is it anonymous, right? Well, we're buying on these exchanges and they tell us from the cell phone towers and all this stuff. Well, how do I know he's in my restaurant, not the restaurant next door? I don't know. Tough question. That's going 2 levels deep where you're going to pick apart some of the other solutions out there that might not be as granular.
Wow.
That's very intelligent use of data.
That's why we're here.
That's that 80%. Yeah.
And is that where the name Zenreach came from? Is because of that level of understanding and awareness?
To reach your customers in a seamless fashion where you don't have to worry about it. You can be Zen about reaching them. Yes.
Yeah.
Which I would love to be Zen about reaching my customers and not looking. If I hear the word bad traffic one more time, it's like the new employees and overhead has now become ad spend.
Bad traffic should be confined to the Holland Tunnel, right?
Right.
Exactly.
Like I used to tell all of them, like, man, if you don't like someone, just pretend like you do and say, gosh, I hope your company grows to 1,000 employees and your building's 100,000 square feet. And they're like, that Dave Meltzer loves me. And I'm like, yeah, I just cursed you with employees and overhead. Now my new one is like, Blaine, I hope that mindset mastermind gets so big that you have $100,000 ad spend every month.
Yeah. Yeah. I have been down that road, David. This is a managed process.
Oh, you are definitely the wise one. I'm still a grasshopper to your turtleness there. I absolutely. I'm still learning from the mindset mastermind, man. So anything I missed or any last piece of advice that you would give before we let you go, John?
I think if you're in the offline business, like we're seeing it right now, in-store traffic is coming back. Budgets are coming back. Like this is now like you're probably a month behind the investment you need to make, but invest in the technology. Technology's developed to this point where it's quite sophisticated. Point of sale is much better. We can help you with marketing. Now is the time to make those investments in technology to help you understand your customers better.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. Well, everyone should reach out to you. It's easy, Zenreach.com, CEO of Zenreach, John Kelly. You keep it simple for me. Even I can't screw it up. So we appreciate you. I might be reaching out to drive some of that traffic my way. And I'd love to see if I could truly get to a walkthrough rate with some of my private group coaching and things that are exploding on my end, get more efficient. So thanks for joining us, John.
Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Thanks, John. Take care.
Great guest.
I love that.
Yeah.
Being able to tap that 80%. I mean, that's a big deal. That really is. It's interesting how he's putting that together.
Yeah, and I think part of the aspect of over 50% of the dollars and only 20% of the business is because the business is offline, but it's so ubiquitous now between traditional and online, and that we can really utilize that community building in order to effectuate so much more. Where a billboard isn't going to build a community, it will raise awareness, but also provide us content in which to build a community and an aspect of virality that we've never received before. It's not like you've driven by a billboard and then called your wife and said, you got to tell all your friends I just went by this great Coca-Cola billboard. But if they have a cool Coke billboard, people will take pictures of it, share it with their wife. The wife will share it with her whole community. Their community will, pretty soon that billboard's all over Africa. They're reading about it in the Bagani. Anyway, we have a really special guest as our cleanup hitter. She's one of my favorite people. She's family to me. So we're always nice to people, but I am just so proud of her. She's founder and president of the Bravest Self Ventures. And her name is Charly Jaffe. And she's right here with her beautiful smile and beautiful face.
There she is.
How are you?
Well, always a little bit better when I get to see you.
Oh, see, now you know why I love her. This is my mentor, Blaine Bartlett.
Charly, it's so great to meet you. David has spoken about you, and it's great to be able to put a face to the name.
I appreciate it.
Well, Charly, I'm going to talk about grief for a second. And you launched on May 13th the COVID Grief Network. What's so interesting is, I've done a little bit of therapy myself, participating in mentorship and seeking therapy because of the word grief. And it's not that I'm a grief person. It's what it means to me. And in Judaism, they sit Shiva. And it's the grieving process where the family gets together for 8 days. You stay together, you tell stories, you cry, you laugh, people bring you food. But when I was young, I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would you torture yourself? And my brother's a rabbi, and I'm asking him, and he says, because you have to process things. You can't just go through 12 steps if you're an addict and you read the 12 steps and you say, I get it. I never have to, be an addict again. And grieving requires a process. And it requires a platform. And you have helped so many people through this process. What motivated you to dedicate so much of your time, attention, and intention to helping people grieve?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the explanation and the question. So I joined the COVID Grief Network. We launched about a year ago, and I joined. Someone had invited me in, but I got COVID right in the beginning, and I've been quite sick for quite a long time. But I also recognized that I was one of the lucky ones. And so for me, it was really about being able to pay it forward. I was very well aware that I could have easily gone the other way, and I could have been one of the people that had been grieved. And so for me, as you talked about when we go through grief, we're surrounded by community. There's so many processes and rituals we have, and that just hasn't been available to so many of the folks grieving the loss of loved ones. And there's millions around the US. We don't necessarily always talk about it or look at it, and it's been really dehumanized. And for me, I have a big passion of really looking towards those things that we run away from. And so being able to create space where, especially young adults, can have a space where they can meet other people who are going through similar types of grief and get free support is huge and important. How we show up for each other in times of great loss, I really think is so defining. And so I just showed up in the way that I would hope to be remembered, and that I would hope other people would show up.
Yeah, that's the whole notion of paying it forward. I gave a TED talk a couple of weeks ago, and one of the things that I led with was a statistical fact that there's about 6 billion people on this planet, and in 100 years, every one of them will be dead. So our question isn't how are you living? The question really becomes, how am I dying? And am I dying with purpose? And I don't mean physically dying, but each breath I take is a little death. Today dies into tomorrow. And so that instead of focusing on, how am I going to live? People end up living a meaningless life because their focus is so far out. If I'm looking at how am I dying right now? What am I dying for right now? That begins to change the whole tenor of how I'm actually living today. And that idea of paying it forward. So I just celebrate what you've done, Charly. It's the grieving is part of how what am I dying to today that gives birth to something tomorrow. And it's just a beautiful way of actually working with people.
Well, thank you, and I so appreciate that. One of my, I would call my guiding questions when I'm making big risks or hard decisions, and I've shared this with David before, is does this make me more ready to die?
Yeah.
And in a way where I want to live my life with so much fullness that when I come to the other end of my days, I'm ready to go. But also I would say our greatest connection can really be found in our deepest pain. And so when we show up for each other in community, it's not just about helping those who are hurting. It can bring so much more depth and meaning to our lives.
Yeah.
And, speaking of pain, struggles, setbacks, etc., in these crises, you've also written an extraordinary book that was a #1 bestseller, Crises into Success, which is, to me, that turn signal philosophy that I have, that crises, pain, setbacks, and mistakes are simply turn signals to something better, a better situation. But yet some people see it as a stop sign. And you work a lot with suicide prevention. My mission of empowering over 1 billion people was because one of my daughter's 12-year-old friends killed themselves, and I still get choked up because I don't understand it. Sorry. But for me, I sat there going, how does this happen? Like, I get people with drugs and alcohol, older people, depression, PTSD, right? I understand that, but there's a problem when a 12-year-old is put into a situation of separation and crisis, because the mind is not even capable, right? It doesn't make sense of how you can get a 12-year-old into that position. And so your book is that turn signal book that's necessary for all ages. What are some of the things that younger people can do that when what appears to be a crisis is actually a learning opportunity or a turn signal? What can they do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say one of the biggest pieces is, it sounds simple, but it can be much harder to do in practice, is simply asking for help. So often when we're feeling really isolated, and especially when we're looking at suicidality, there can be the impulse to put up walls and to isolate even further and to hide our pain. And it's a really understandable instinct, but whether we are talking about young people in crisis or entrepreneurs in business, the exact moment when we want to hide from the world the most is the very moment where we need connection the most.
Yeah.
So I would say, and not everyone deserves our story. Being vulnerable is scary. You don't have to broadcast it out to the world. But whether it's a trusted friend, a family member, a hotline, like hotlines exist because not everyone has someplace to turn to. Or if you do, you're not ready, you may not be ready to turn to your network for support. So being able to find wherever it is, to find that sense and source of connection, which for the COVID Grief Network, that was such a big piece of that, is offering connection with people who get it. You don't need to know them, but it's people who can understand and support that experience.
Yeah. And that would bring meaning and purpose to what I'm going through. And that, I've been through the grief process when my wife died. And I say the process, it's not like check. There's ways that through conversation, through that relating in the process, that meaning begins to emerge again. What's life about? Viktor Frankl, I think, said, life isn't made unbearable by circumstances. It's only by lack of meaning and purpose. And that's, I think, the power of true grieving is sitting Shiva. It gives meaning and purpose. It certainly does. What was the meaning and purpose of this passing of that person in my life? All of those sorts of things, but it only is born out of conversation.
Absolutely. And sometimes when we can't find the meaning or purpose in our own situation, it's easier to help others find it in theirs. Yeah. And so it actually can be this like baby step towards ourselves getting stronger is first if we can't focus on helping ourselves, sometimes helping others can be that first step, especially when it's others who've gone through that same situation.
Right. And Charly, one of the other interesting lessons that I've learned from knowing you and your family, because I have my own daughters, is that, in the suicide or the depression or anxiety or the crisis mode that, young women find themselves in, especially, it's like, well, why won't you just talk to me? And I look at, your family, and your father and I are so similar in personalities. There's optimists in the world, and Charly's dad is a toptimist like me. And, one of my daughters told me when she was having a difficult time, it makes it worse. Like, I can't talk to you because you don't even understand it. You're a toptimist. You couldn't even imagine why anyone would be anxious or frustrated or worried or depressed. That's not even in your genre. It's not in your makeup. So I can't talk to you. And it just struck me so hard that I thought, well, of course you would come to me because I'm super positive. I'll regenerate this attitude. And all it did was create more separation and make it worse and more frustrating for her that she couldn't tell me because she felt, one, that she would be less than, or two, she was worried that I won't even understand what it's like to be sad or depressed or anxious in any way. How do people, because I know you have personal experience of having a toptimist as a dad,
Yes.
How do we heal that relationship? Because you have such a beautiful relationship. You do a lot with your father. You have a wonderful podcast with them, and I know writing and other things that you do. But personality wise, your dad and I are a lot to take when you're a daughter.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm very open about this. I have been the suicidal teenager that didn't open up to her parents. So I really get what it's like to be in that position. And I think that sometimes the most helpful thing that we can do from the parental position, especially from that optimist word I learned today, is being able to show vulnerability. Because no matter how optimistic you are, you have felt pain before. And if you're someone who looks with rose-colored glasses, it's learning how to say, you know what, those rose-colored glasses, as much as they help me, in this moment, they actually might hurt the people around me. And we don't have to be so positive all the time. If it's taken to an extreme, that can be toxic. And so learning how to take off something that seems like such a strength and making space for these other types of emotions to come in. The easiest way for someone to be vulnerable is to not to break the ice ourselves, where someone's willing to step into the space first and invite you in rather than saying, you lead the way. And that can look like so many different things. You don't have to have been suicidal to be able to express vulnerability and pain. But it's not how we necessarily naturally think the best approach is. And so it's really challenging a lot of those inner ideas of what's right. My dad always used to like to say, do you want to be right or do you want to be successful? And I hate that, but now I do appreciate it. But it doesn't just apply to business, right? Like in every part of our life, if we're so enmeshed in our strengths and see them as pure strengths and pure goodness, then we're missing the downsides of those. And so being able to open that space, it's simple, but not, again, so effective. And sometimes harder for us than others.
Yeah, I tell my girls I'd rather be kind than right, and it's a tough one to swallow. Well, you are a beautiful soul. You are experienced, educated, and just in the right mindset. And thank you so much for being so vulnerable and helping so many people. It's charlyjaffe.com. Where else can people reach out? Let them know about the hotline. I know you guys are featuring the cast of Rent and some other things. So give us the last minute of anything we missed or where people can reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the COVID Grief Network, we provide free grief support to young adults, folks in their 20s and 30s who've lost someone close to COVID. And folks can find us at www.covidgriefnetwork.org. And there and across social, yes, as you mentioned, we had a great video with the final Broadway cast of Rent singing Seasons of Love, young adults in our network talking about the people they've lost, and seeing home videos to really see the humans behind this huge number we've seen. Because as things are getting better in society, for folks grieving, that separation we brought up earlier, that separation gets so much bigger for folks in grief. So it doesn't have to happen right now for you to be deserving of support.
I love it. And I love you. Say hi to your family. Thank you so much for joining us.
I will. Love you too. And just always a pleasure to be here.
Anytime. Just call. Thank you.
Great to meet you, Charly. Take care.
Oh, they dropped her off. She's awesome, isn't she?
She is. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So big fan of them and their family, all of them. The Jaffe family is incredible, philanthropic. They've just so you know, Blaine, their family started and donated San Diego Jewish Academy, the school which my mom was a teacher and principal of, and my siblings all went to, and extremely generous as the founder of Safe Skin, and had 2 big exits, and the partial owner of the Phoenix Suns, who's are in the playoffs right now. So they played basketball at Cornell, I think, as well as father. But anyway, takeaway for the day. What extraordinary guest. And I had a great cleanup hitter with Charly. So what do you got for me?
Well, I'm going to just come back to, relationship is the theme. Playing chess, that whole metaphor. I was reminded of a quote, that Rabindranath Tagore, years ago. The one who plants trees knowing that he'll never sit in the shade has at least started to understand the meaning of life. And that's, every one of our guests have been planting seeds with a long-term view. It's, that idea of being a center of distribution, do good, be kind, be gentle, be respectful, nurture. It's relationship. There's nobody out there but me. And if I'm taking care of others, by definition, I'm going to be taking care of myself. I can't not be doing that. So that's my takeaway this week from the show. And it's a mindset. It is a particular mindset that is not a zero-sum mindset. Life is it's an abundant place. And it actually is a very healthy place. The purpose of life is to thrive. And that's what each one of our guests have been focusing on, whether it's grieving through a COVID loss or helping a restaurateur begin to get back on their feet again, or whatever it may have been from placement in social media. It's all about thriving, and thriving in a generative way. So that's the mindset.
Good. Well, my takeaway for the day is the inverse of yours. So instead of providing service or value or elevating others, it's ask for help. And I think,
I knew you would resonate with that one.
Yeah. All the successful entrepreneurs, from Mary to my dear Charly, they're here and they ask for help. And that's what provided them the opportunity to accelerate, grow, and elevate others to ask for help as well. So everyone out there, you want my best piece of advice, ask for help, be kind to your future self. Learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM Mindset Mastermind, moving the possibility to profit. I love the blend between the two currencies of money and faith. And I love you, Blaine, and I appreciate all your wisdom today, especially you just brought a lot to the table. Thank you so much. I will talk to you soon. You can have any days. You just tell me when you're available for office hours on Bloomberg. We'll be filming. You just tell me what day you can be there, and I'll work around your schedule, okay?
Okay, that's great. I'll circle
We're
back.
filming July 12th, the week of July 12th. So Monday to
12th.
Thursday, you get to pick the day. So, all right, I will see you
man.
then. Everybody, as a reminder, office hours is hitting the big time with Bloomberg and Amazon. Thank you so much, Blaine. Learn.blainebladlett.com/LMM. This is David Meltzer. You can always reach out to me, david@dmeltzer.com. Get the 5 daily practices. Know your what, your who, your how, your now, and apply your why. You can have my book, ebook, audio book. I'll sign a book, send it to you, ship it to you, pay for it. Not a problem. Most importantly, everyone, we've hit the hour. I will see you tomorrow. Training's on dealing with negativity. We got Clubhouse. We got training at 11, Clubhouse at 6 a.m., the Breakfast of Champions. But most importantly, be kind to your future self and do good deeds. I'll see you tomorrow morning. Have a great night.